Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. This is John Suntress. It's December and it's holiday season. Consider a lot of the guests on Word Balloon as gift ideas because I really think a lot of the creators have new product, no matter what it is, whether it's a film or a TV show or obviously comic book, a graphic novel, whatever. And, of course, our regular sponsor, Aftershock, should be considered that way as well. If you have questions or comments about the show, reach me via email. Best way to contact me, john@wordballoon.com. Also, follow me on Twitter under John Wordballoon and on Facebook on my name, John Suntress, and the Word Balloon Network. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for listening through the commercials. Yes, sometimes they repeat, but it is the holiday season, and I have no control over the repeaters. But that's how I get paid from them, is by you listening all the way through those commercials and into the show. We're coming back after one more commercial, and then we'll start things off. But as always, thanks very much for listening. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the weekend, and welcome to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. First off, I was blown away on Thursday because Chris Neesman, formerly of 11 O'Clock Comics, is driving home. He's listening to NPR's All Things Considered. And this was on, and actually, I'm sorry, I'm doing the math. Wednesday, he was driving home. Listen to All Things Considered. They had a story about Superman revealing his identity as Clark Kent to the world, the DC Universe, in Superman 18. And they name check and play a clip from Word Balloon and the Bendis tapes, and Bendis describing the coming status quo now that Clark has revealed his identity to the world. Blew my mind. Had no idea it was going to happen. Glenn Weldon, who filed the story on NPR, is an old friend. He name-checks me in his unauthorized Batman history, and we talked a bit about his unauthorized Superman history on Word Balloon. Pop Culture Hound, I believe, is the podcast on NPR or Pop Culture Party. Excuse me, Pop Culture Hound is Chris Thompson. Pop Culture Party is the NPR podcast that Chris is part of, and he is a pop culture reporter for NPR. But it blew me away. National Public Radio running a story and name checks and plays a clip from Word Balloon. If you search for NPR and Superman on Google, you will get to the news link. It's only 3 minutes long, and wow. That's amazing that Word Balloon was part of an NPR story. So I thank the network, NPR, and I also thank Glenn Weldon for filing the story and name-checking Word Balloon. Pretty cool. Now, on to today's episode. Tony Fleecs, my buddy. I love Tony. I truly do, man. I've known Tony for years, since he was self-publishing comics, and one of the members of the Bendis board, and he and I always got along, and then we met face-to-face and got along even more. I mean, we've known each other for nearly 15 years at least, if not longer, and what can I say? I'm shaking my head. He's just one of my guys, as you'll hear in the introduction. Well, Tony has a brand new book from Action Lab called Timeshopper, written by Tony, drawn by Christian Meesey. They showed me their pages years ago, and I was very intrigued by the concept, and Christian's art is just gorgeous. It's a great time travel comedy that is crazy and fun, and I'll tell you, it's a great companion piece to Chrononauts, Mark Miller and Sean Murphy's excellent series. But Timeshopper is from Action Lab Comics, and it's coming out in January. You can order it now. Go to your local shop and do that. It's terrific. And, man, I'll tell you, they've gotten great coverage for this from Sci-Fi.com and Forbes and Major Spoilers, the great podcast, among others. And, of course, our buddies at 11 O'Clock Comics and The Dreamer have done great interviews with Tony as well. Well, check out for yourself on this conversation on Word Balloon as we talk about Timeshopper. Tony's, again, a longtime friend. He's been doing a lot of great work with My Little Pony and also the YA Star Wars adventures that IDW has been putting out. And he's just one of my favorite people in comics, as I say. He's just a good guy. We share a lot of common interests in, of course, the classic Planet of the Apes. And Tony keeps nudging me to embrace the new movies. I watched the first one, and I was just kind of about the second one. I still haven't seen the third one, but I'll get there. I promise, Tony, I'll get there. But we have a lot of fun in this conversation, just comparing notes, talking about Timeshopper, his Star Wars work, and of course his My Little Pony work. Tony Fleecs on today's Word Balloon. All brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you greatly, League, for your support via Patreon. It means a lot. Subscribing to Word Balloon is not necessary, but it really does help out the program. It helps me build out Word Balloon. And I'll tell you, man, the franchise is expanding, and it is with the help of the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you greatly. If you want to subscribe to Word Balloon, do you think Word Balloon's worth $1 a month to you? Do you think it's worth the price of a comic? Patreon.com/wordballoon, or you can click on the Patreon ad on the front page of wordballoon.com. But thank you greatly for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. It's December, and it's a great month for Aftershock. Lots of great releases from some of the top talent in comic books. I mean, whether you're talking about Donny Cates or Marguerite Bennett or Tim Seeley or my buddy Phil Hester or Ryan Kelly and Cullen Bunn, Juan Doe, all these great names, Garth Ennis, so many wonderful creators that have decided to work with Aftershock Comics. Stephanie Phillips, who's been on Word Balloon, has a brand new project coming out in February. I cannot wait to see it. Steve Orlando has a new book coming out in the spring for Aftershock. Cannot wait to see it. And this is what I'm saying, man. They tap some of the top names in comics to present to you amazing genre-bending stories that deserve your attention. Go to their website. Great time, the holiday season, to give a friend a new graphic novel of something out of their comfort zone, but they will be blown away, whether it's Matthew Klickstein's You Are Obsolete or some of the other great titles that are waiting for you at Aftershock Comics. You will find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Without further ado, a great casual conversation with my good friend Tony Fleecs about his new Action Lab book, Timeshopper, with Christian Meesey doing the art. It's a lot of fun. It's very, very funny. And we get all the details from Tony on today's Word Balloon. Tony Fleecs, welcome back to Word Balloon. One of my favorite people in comics. Truly.
Oh.
You're one of my guys where I say, I wish we all lived on the same street because we would see each other more. Because when we are in town, we try at the very least to have a drink, if not a full meal, and then spend some time talking.
Yeah, we had beef last time I was in Chicago.
Yes.
What was that place called?
I believe we were at a Mr. Beef, which is a very popular, we were at Al's. Al's Beef.
Al's is what it was, yeah.
There you go, man. It's like cheesesteaks in Philly. Al's and Mr. Beef are kind of the big competitors and stuff as far as Italian beef go. But
you had to show me and tell me what it was, because I had no idea. When I go to Chicago, I just know pizza.
I hear you, man.
So I felt like I was really getting the insider scoop on what to eat in Chicago.
Yeah, these are prime beef sandwiches. If people are listening and you want a good roast beef sandwich done the Chicago way, that's what you want to do. It's go to Al's or go to Mr. Beef in downtown on Orleans. But yeah, we were at Al's Beef in Rosemont. It was like a train stop away from Wizard Chicago when it's in Rosemont.
Yeah.
So yeah. Beautiful, buddy. Absolutely. And in fact, I believe at that show we met up with your artist. And are you the artist, or is he the artist?
He's the artist on this. Okay. Christian Meesey, yeah.
Yeah, and Christian was showing me pages from Timestopper, correct? Or Shopper?
Yeah. Timeshopper. Timeshopper is something, but it's not this.
It's not this. No, Timeshopper. Excuse me, from Action Lab. And man, this was 2 years ago, so I'm so glad that it's coming out. When is it coming out, first of all?
Comes out in February.
Okay.
Either end of January, but probably more likely in February, because it's getting printed, I think, overseas, or maybe in Canada. I don't know for sure. That's why I get somebody to publish these things, so I don't have to know that sort of thing. But I know that it's sort of like, once it goes off to the printer, then there's sort of a question mark about how long it takes for it to get back.
I understand. Yeah.
But it's in previews now. FOC is in like early January.
Okay, great. Well, that's good, because we'll put this out in December. And, as you and I are recording, we'll probably put it out later this week. And then,
cool.
So people have plenty of time to go to your local store and order Timeshopper. A lot of fun. And I will let you do the 10-cent elevator pitch on Timeshopper in terms of what it's about.
Yeah, it's a story about a guy that it's sort of set a couple years in the future. There's like flying cars and stuff. And this guy gets a job time traveling. Like this company hires them and they say like, hey, we got time travel. We've gone all over the world and looked at everything in history, and we've pinpointed some key events that just need fixing. So you can go back in time and like, stop the sinking of the Titanic and kill baby Hitler, and just sort of like these little things that if we fix them, it'll be a much better world,
JFK, Franz Ferdinand, Tupac,
yeah,
among the other, time errors, obviously, and it'll be a better world if these people survive. So that's Carl's mission, and obviously things go wrong.
Yeah, well, as soon as they give him a box full of money, like Doc Brown did in Back to the Future 2, and they say, here's just, if you need supplies, you can buy them. Here's money from all the different time periods, all the money you could possibly need. And as soon as he gets back in time, he just sees how cheap everything used to be and gets completely distracted. And so he just starts shopping in time and not getting his mission accomplished. And so hilarity ensues.
Absolutely, man. It's so funny. I literally just got off the phone with Mark Miller a few days ago, and we were talking about Chrononauts very briefly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's in the same vein as Chrononauts, but it's a lot funnier. And
thank you.
Absolutely. Well, and it's no disrespect meant to Mark, but no, I mean this is definitely a broader comedy where I think Mark's story is a little more kind of action adventure with
Chrononauts is sort of like a Guardians of the Galaxy vibe, like comedy adventure.
And this is really, as you say, it's kind of Bill and Ted meet Supermarket Sweep.
Yeah, it's comedy.
Yeah. That's great, man.
Yeah, I'm real happy about it. I wrote it. This guy, Christian Meesey, a buddy of mine, drew it and drew the crap out of it. And so I'm just real excited about how it's coming out and excited to get it out there because, like you said, we talked about it 2 years ago. So that's how long we've been working on it.
Well, it looks beautiful, man. And really, the colors are outstanding. I'm scrolling up to give credit to Brad Simpson for doing the colors. And Tone Rodriguez laid it out for Christian to which is great. So you got an all-star team as far as the full production. And it really is, man. It's a great broad comedy. I know people will like it, and I love time travel stories, so I'm all for that.
Me too.
And it really does kind of indulge that itch of God. If you could time travel, I'd go back to 1938 and spend a dime on Action Comics #1.
Of course, get a bunch of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd clear the rack. Absolutely, totally.
Yeah, that's sort of where it came from, was just whenever I see time travel stories, I always think about, like, when I see them walking by stuff that's cool, I'm just like, oh, you could get that, I don't think it's an impulse that only I have, but I definitely see, in Back to the Future, there's just, like, all those amazing cars, and you're just like, oh, man, he could just take one of those cars and hide it somewhere. I mean, like they did with the DeLorean, basically, but, like he could have just had a garage full of, 1955 cars when he got back to the present day. He could have been the coolest guy in high school.
Yeah, like buy a Hornet or, a Hudson or whatever, or a Tucker or something like that. Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah. No, some of the cool vintage cars. 100%, man. No, that's great. And really, like, the future city looks fantastic, and, the characters are drawn very broadly. In a great humorous way, and I think it's a great little production, man. 48 pages, 64. How many pages?
48. Yeah, it's just a short graphic novel. We're doing it album format, hardcover, like Franco's book that he did at Action Lab with Sarah Richard.
Yeah,
that same format. Yeah. That was what made me talk to Action Lab about it in the first place, was I saw how cool that thing came out, and I was just like, oh, these guys are doing the format that I want to do, so let me, I knew them already, and I was like, well, let's go talk to them about this, because they already are doing it, so.
Sure. Would they be the ones that would try to sell it beyond the North American market and sell it to other countries as well? Because I do think this is the kind of format that obviously does sell in other languages, too.
I hope so. Yeah, I talked to him about it briefly. I went over to the Netherlands earlier this year for a show.
Wow!
And I met some of the people over there that did like translations, and I talked to them about it. And was just like, oh, I got this book coming out, and they were like, we translate the big stuff.
Oh, really?
But definitely, like, gave me their info and stuff, and were like, send it to us anyway. And then I talked to Action Lab about it. I was like, "Is this you or is this me? Who deals with this?" And they're the ones that deal with getting stuff translated. So hopefully, I would love to. I agree. It's the sort of thing that you could see in not just the United States. I don't think that the humor is specifically American, but it's specific to my vibe, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. That's no. I didn't know where your sentence was going. It just kind of stopped. But all right, very
just
good.
Just trailed off into nothing.
Exactly.
Let's talk about. We sort of glossed over the team, and I can sort of tell you about how, like, who did what and how it all came together. So Christian, the artist on it, like I said, he's a buddy of mine, and he's been making comics for years. And we'd never worked together. And when I came to him with this idea, he had been doing, like, he does a lot of anthology stuff, but he'd never done like a one shot like this, sort of like with there's a lot in it, every panel has a lot of backgrounds and
lots of business going on. 100%, man. Yes.
Yeah. And so we talked about it, and I had worked with Tone Rodriguez for years in his studio, and he lives in Louisiana now. He lives where Rob Guillory and Cody Chamberlain live.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I
gotta get Rob back on, man. Go on.
Lafayette. Yeah, he lives in Lafayette.
Sure.
But so we still work in his, not the same place, but we just took the name of the studio and moved like a mile away. But we'd worked together, and we'd always done projects, like stuff that nobody would ever see, where it's like, a TV show needs a comic book, or somebody's pitching a story and they need a short comic book. We did stuff all the time where, like, he would lay it out and then I would draw it, or he would lay it out and Chris Moreno would draw it and I'd ink it, just sort of like studio jobs. And we could always bang stuff out really quickly that way, and it just sort of worked great. And he's just like a machine when it comes to laying stuff out. And like, he just has done comics for so long that he really understands storytelling. And because he's done Simpsons as well as like more realistic stuff, like he did like Snake Plissken comics and Conan, and he did a book called Violent Messiahs. And so he can do sort of both. He can do like action adventure stuff and he can do cartoony stuff. Cool. And so I went to him and I was like, could we pay you to just lay this thing out? And that way Christian wouldn't have to worry about sort of like, he could just worry about, drawing the characters and doing the pages and stuff. Like, they all look specifically like his style, but he sort of had a leg up when it came to like, not starting on a blank page. So Tone would do layouts, but he's such a Luddite that he doesn't have like a scanner or anything like that. So he would just text me pages, like pictures from his phone. Okay. And then I would take those and turn them into Blue Line files, and then I would Dropbox those to Christian, then he would print them off and ink them and send them back to me. And then I'd send them to Lauren, our flatter, and then we'd send those to Brad Simpson, the colorist. So it's sort of like I'm sort of like the writer, and then I also serve as sort of like the man in chair, like I'm the hub. Stuff comes into me, and I send it out to somebody else, and it's sort of like what an editor would do if we had hired an editor.
It turned out great, man. Honestly, like you said, there's a lot of business going on in the illustrations, and he's got a great broad comedic style for this book. Everything looks right. The future looks right. All the different periods, and there are a ton of periods. Again, you pack a lot in 48 pages. In every panel, there's big bits of business going on. And yeah, man, and I do think that it would absolutely translate quite well in other countries, and I think people would definitely enjoy it.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, man, I certainly hope so too. It's a lot of fun.
Overseas publishers, if you're listening, you can reach me at TonyFleecs@hotmail.com. You can reach Action Lab at actionlab.com.
There you go. Absolutely.
We'd love to be in the overseas business.
I am pleasantly surprised of the people that I discover that listen to Word Balloon, both in the comic business and in the periphery of pop culture and stuff. And, God, that's always like the greatest compliment where it's like, oh no, I heard him on Word Balloon. How do I get in touch with that person? So yeah, it's like, good for you, man. By all means, pump the product, absolutely. So again, final cutoff coming in January. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, and when you make comics, you're always looking for something to listen to. So I listen, we listen to a lot of comic book stuff, and then we listen to a lot of, other, I feel like you probably have an enormous comic book creator listener base just because of how long you have to sit here not doing anything else. Artists more than writers, I would reckon.
Sure. No, you're right, man. No, I mean, God, I've always, like Brian Hitch, was talking about Word Balloon at the beginning of, actually it was before I got sick. It was back in 2018. And I'm like, would you come on? And he's like, oh, God, thanks for asking. And I'm like, well, I didn't know you knew who I was. Of course I'm asking. And I don't know how to get in touch with you, so yes, please. So, and Hitch, famous. Christ, he's been on like 3 times in the last over a year and a half or whatever. So, you never know. It was great, and literally, he was part of the episode that was released right before yours. David Lloyd from V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
And Aces Weekly, he's, his digital comic that he's been doing for almost the last 10 years. God, it is so flattering. I've always loved his work. And he's like, John, I love what you do. And I'm like, what are you doing listening to my shit? Like, aim higher, as I always say. I'm like, find something cooler to listen to. Jesus Christ. So
what would you recommend when you're putting yourself down like that? Like, what would you suggest? What's the better version of your show?
Well, and no offense to my peers, I like Dave Harper. I think Dave Harper does a great show. Off Panel. I think that's a really good interview show.
Yeah, I like that show.
And who else does good interviews? When Josh Flanagan on iFanboy does his interviews, I think he does a really good job. I think Heidi at The Beat, and I think Heidi and Calvin do very good interviews. Calvin Reed and Heidi McDonald. Yeah, so there's a handful of people that I try not to listen because I don't want to be influenced when I talk to the people, when we all talk to the same people and stuff. But right. Usually they still end up being different conversations. I think that's my own self-paranoia.
Yeah.
So, and then as far as like discussion shows, I really don't listen anymore because I don't care. And that's the same thing with you. Well, it's the same thing with YouTube shows that talk about not even comics, but just like Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever and stuff. And like punditry has gotten so negative.
Yeah.
And I'm just and believe me, I mean, you know me, dude, and hell, I was Breaking Bad on a few people we know before we started recording and everything. So no, I'm just as much of a jerk as any normal person and can be petty and stupid. I don't like it just because I don't like it. And God, we've had our discussions. Certainly, we will talk about it a little bit more about Planet of the Apes and stuff. Although I still haven't seen the subsequent movies because, like I said, they just
what?
I don't know, Tone. It just
you didn't have to work for months.
I know, man. I know. I was telling you. I know when I was sitting in the hospital, I couldn't watch or read anything new.
You're going to be so mad at yourself. I mean, you're going to be furious at yourself.
Well,
I can't wait for you to see these movies.
I kind of want to see the last one because I'm cool. I'm excited about Woody being in it, Woody Harrelson. But
see all of them.
Yeah,
it's like the difference between 8 hours and 2 hours.
Yeah,
who cares?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't have that joy from those new Planet of the Apes movies like I do from the classic 5.
Sure, of course.
Because, yeah, man, good Lord. As you know, we've had this discussion.
History?
What's that?
Yeah. So what could replace the history that you have with those movies in these new things that come out?
Well, and that's the thing. Well, it's just like these new. I'm so glad we're like diverting for a second in this just general subject. Like all these new live action remakes of all the Disney animated classics. I don't need to see CGI real animals talking to each other. That's not why I showed up, and I feel that way about the Planet of the Apes movies. It's like, no, put them in the weird leather outfits. And I want Maurice Evans speaking for Dr. Zaius, and I want Roddy McDowall speaking for Cornelius. I mean, there's just something really charming. And hey, man, is it Andy Sedaris who plays Caesar?
Yeah, no, Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis, excuse me. I knew it was close.
Andy Sedaris made the Booby movies.
He did. That's right.
And he was the Wide World of Sports.
Yes, the cinema. If you get all right, again, sorry, kids, but here's a little. You see, this is why I love talking to Tony. And Tony's. I'm a little older than Tony, but he knows. Yeah, Andy Sedaris made these movies in the '80s. Well, first of all, great sports director for ABC. in particular college football, not pro football. And he's literally the guy who was smart enough to cut to the stands and be like, all right, find cute co-eds and let's show them as much as we're showing the action on the field.
I think he was also at Munich, though, too. Like, I think he's a big part of that story.
You're right. He probably was because ABC Sports was a lean but very efficient operation. So you're probably right. But yeah, sadly, I remember the TNA stuff. So then, in the end,
Hard Ticket to Hawaii.
Yes, and Malibu Express, I want to say, was one of his movies.
That's correct.
And yeah, these in the '80s, he left sports and started making these low-budget action movies that had speedboats and motorcycles and cars and Playmate centerfolds in their first act. Donna Spear was a Playmate from Playboy that made a couple Andy Sedaris movies. And they're hilarious, and they're fun popcorn movies because there is good action. I mean, he knows how to quick cut and put a movie together, and with editing and great shots and stuff, he had an amazing eye for the camera. Unbelievable.
They're sort of like Roger Corman movies for the '80s.
Yes.
And definitely like the sort of thing that would be on Up All Night on USA.
Absolutely, yes.
We just made this conversation only for people over the age of 40 years old.
Well, but
you and me and Mike Norton.
Well, yeah, exactly, and Tim Seeley, exactly. But my buddy Dave Baker, who's a great indie creator, and it's so funny. He's like broken. I just had a word balloon with him about a month ago. He, for people, if you haven't listened to this episode, you got to listen to it. He was always a mini comics guy and really funny, and I always appreciated his stuff. And while he's also been doing comics, he also was trying to break in as a screenwriter. And this one producer came to him, and he's an independent producer, a little weird, because he really believed in aliens. And he's like, I want to do a movie with aliens versus Navy SEALs. And I've got real Navy SEALs that will play the SEALs, but I need a script. So Dave wrote this script. He thought the whole production was going to be weird, so he turned it in and walked away. I put out the episode, and 3 days later, one of the Word Balloon listeners on Netflix finds the movie. It was made, and Dave is the top writer on the credits because he wrote the original story. And he was thrilled. He's like, holy shit, it got made. He didn't even know. He's like, I can't believe it. That's fantastic. So, and also, man, I wish I liked like straight to Redbox horror movies from like The Asylum and companies like that, because I get PR releases all the time for a lot of horror. Occasionally I'll get westerns. Very, very occasionally I'll get science fiction. And I mostly, just am not into it enough to, like, they're like, hey, here's a screener link, it's all online and everything, but I can watch these movies in the same way that we like these Andy Sedaris movies. And like I was starting to say, and you were, that Norton and Tim Seeley and those people, they love these movies. So yeah, I wish I was more into horror, because this would be a big part of Word Balloon, because literally every week I get like 2 or 3 of these PR emails, like, hey, if you want to interview the director or whatever. And I actually had a guy on a couple months ago who made a Demon Hunter movie with William Shatner and Jerry Ryan in it. And it was fine, but it just isn't my thing. But he also made a biopic about the rock band Lynyrd Skynyrd and their infamous plane crash that took out like a third of the band.
Wow. And
I'm like, wow. And so, I'm like, I talked for about 10 minutes about the Demon movie. I'm like, all right, tell me about the Skynyrd movie you're making. And sadly, he's like still in film festival mode, so he really wouldn't go into detail. He's like, we're still trying to break through and get a distributor or whatever, but it was in the press release, so obviously he was going to talk a little bit about it. And I wish he had talked more, because I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to talk about, man. And you just never know. And also, as you know, in these like Andy Sedaris movies too, I know one, Ted Lang from The Love Boat, Isaac, is a bad guy in one of them, as I remember, a drug dealer or something like that. And Stephen Bond, who was a big soap opera actor who was on General Hospital in the 80s, he was in a couple of them and stuff. So, and again, all the Playmates. So, yeah, no, I'm sorry. And I know this is a massive tangent from Andy Serkis doing Caesar. But yeah, back to the original subject. I don't know, live action I don't know. There's something missing in these new ape movies.
Well, I think the point you're trying to make is that, like, with those Disney remakes, the reason we were going to see Disney movies wasn't because there were lions or because there was genies in them. It was because they were cartoons.
Yeah.
And so when you take that part away from it, it's like, well, I mean, I guess I'll see it.
Yeah.
You know? You're just sort of riding only on nostalgia. But so you're saying apes, you were going not because it was apes, but because it was the makeup and the effects, like that was what captured your imagination. Absolutely,
the art design and all, the sets and the costumes and man, I'll tell you, nothing offended me more, and it was a different ape movie, but when Tim, what's his face, Tim Burton did his Mark, and we've had this conversation before.
Yeah,
that Mark Wahlberg ape movie. It's actually, there are funny, cheesy things about it. And I did see it in the theater and everything. But man, when he was breaking bad on those original 5 movies, the costumes suck and the makeup wasn't that good. It's like, oh, fuck you. You mean John Chambers, the genius that came up with all that makeup that he won an Academy Award for? That was shit? Fuck you, Tim Burton. Sorry. No, wrong.
To bring it back to time travel, what's so great about it, though, is that because of Dr. Heisline's theory of time travel, like, everything fits. Like, the Tim Burton movie fits off in a different corner, and the new movies fit off in a different corner, and they're all, like, it all sort of works together in some weird way. Like, it's not like a continuing narrative, but the Planet of the Apes universe, it all works together because they sort of kept backing themselves into the corner in those early movies, and they had to come up with time travel.
Right.
So, like, because they sort of found themselves at that place, now it all, it all works.
Right, and I know, too, that, like, they make nods to the original films. I know in the first, which by the way, as you know, I love the James Franco first movie of the new movies and stuff. And that, to me, played very much like a good Outer Limits episode. And, like, the Icarus, the spaceship that Heston is on, is mentioned, and that it's lost in space, things like that. So I did appreciate that, and as I understand, the subsequent sequels and stuff had more nods to the original.
Wait, so you've seen the first one, you just haven't seen 2 and 3?
Right.
Well, for Pete's sake, John. It's like within your grasp. We could hang up right now and come back in 2 hours, and you could have seen these movies.
Oh my God, it was amazing.
I told you.
I know, Tone. I keep meaning to. But I don't know,
I feel like the fundamental difference then is that you show up for the costumes and the design and everything. I show up because of apes.
Well, yeah, apes on horseback with guns. Yeah, what's the problem? What's the downside?
Like apes. I'll watch anything with an ape or a monkey. Like
are you aware of the Saturday morning show Lancelot Link Secret Chimp?
I know that it is a thing that exists, but it's not in my.
You haven't seen it. Yeah, there's episodes on YouTube, and if I had Bernie Capel on from The Love Boat, Doc. Speaking of Ted Lang, and Bernie was one of the voices, and it was live action film with as to the chagrin of most animal rights groups. Let's put chimpanzees in suits. Let's have them walk around answering the phone and driving cars and whatever we need to do to make it look like they're human beings. And,
what did you talk to Doc from The Love Boat about?
About his whole career, because I love Get Smart.
Right.
I'm plugged into a couple conventions, and they tell me about the celebrities that they go after, and also celebrities that are aware of their conventions and like, hey, I'd love to come. And one guy was like, yeah, Bernie Capel really wants to come to my convention. I'm like, get him. And he goes, yeah, but I kind of keep things more in line with, did they do superhero movies? Did they do sci-fi or horror or whatever? And I'm like, well, how about Get Smart being a parody of Bond? And he goes, oh, that's true. And I go, well, he also did, in the early 70s, it only lasted half a season, but before Mel Brooks did Robin Hood Men in Tights, he did a sitcom about Robin Hood in the early 70s called When Things Were Rotten. And Dick Gautier, who played Jaime the Robot on Get Smart, he was Robin Hood. And Dick Van Patten was Friar Tuck, and Bernie was Alan Adale.
Wow.
Yeah. So
this is Brooks?
Yeah, Mel Brooks and Buck Henry. It was literally the Get Smart people doing When Things Were Rotten. And I'm like, that's hero stuff. And he goes, you're right. And I go, dude, how many grandmas and mothers would love to get a picture with Doc from The Love Boat? And also, like, I don't know how much you remember The Love Boat, but, like, in a really weird way, Doc was like the sex symbol on that show. He was always getting women.
Right.
Old girlfriends would be on the ship. He would make new girlfriends on the cruise and stuff. There's even an episode where Melissa Sue Anderson, the older sister from Little House on the Prairie, she's Gopher's sister, and she's just becoming Gopher's younger sister, and she's just becoming of age and wants to become a woman.
Oh my goodness.
And literally throws herself at Doc. And, of course, responsible Doc is like, oh, no. Wait for the right person to come along. She's like, no, I want someone that's experienced, and you're so worldly. You're so worldly, Bernie Capel. And it's on you. The scene's on YouTube, and it is so badly funny. And he was hilarious. He had a million great stories because he was on a million sitcoms as a featured player. And it's great. He's 86 years old. And he was on episodes on this season, Mom and Silicon Valley. I'm watching HBO's Silicon Valley, and there's 86-year-old Bernie Capel, and I'm like, oh my god, I gotta talk to him. And it was great because I'm like, Bernie, I go, and he's like, well, I was very happy with Mom, and yeah, Silicon Valley was fun. I'm like, Bernie, Silicon Valley's a pretty hip show, man. I go, these kids are cutting edge the way Mel Brooks and Buck Henry were in the '60s and everything. And he's like, yeah, I suppose so. So, but it was great. And he's like, go ahead.
No, I guess you're right.
Yeah. And it's just, and he's like, it was great. He had his scene, and he goes, I've never been on a show where they swore as much as they do in Silicon Valley. So I asked them, can I say fuck? And they're like, absolutely, you can say fuck. Can I change my line so I say fuck? So he was great. He was funny as hell, and he did it. And I mean, literally, there's a guy that worked with the Silicon Valley guys and Jack Benny and Danny Kaye.
Right.
What a career. Good Lord.
Yeah.
So, it was amazing. I seriously, man, that was one for me, and I bet a lot of Word Balloon people are like, I have no idea who this is. What comic book does Bernie Capel write, or whatever. Yeah. I didn't care. It was a great opportunity, and I was happy to talk to Bernie Capel. So that was a really good episode.
You listen to the show, you know what's going on. It's just like, John's on one. Let him have this thing. He's so happy. He's in his zone right now.
Yeah, and it did okay, but it certainly didn't do the numbers that a Fraction or a Bendis would get or anything like that. But it's like, exactly. It's like, all right, this one's for me, kids. Well, and that's why, I like expanding the show. And like I said, it's a shame that I'm not into low-budget horror because that would become a facet of the show. And that's why I'm so glad I'm putting out more episodes, too. It just gives me more of a chance to, broaden the show and then, scratch these itches. So, yeah, man. Hey, it's my talk show. I get to do what I want. I like talking to Tony Fleecs about his comic book work. Absolutely, man.
And you don't get into either kind of horror. Like, you don't like other horror movies, do you?
I only, truly, it's the shit that I grew up with. So I really like horror from the classic era of the Universal movies. I love Hammer movies from the 50s through the 70s. I like a lot of the 70s classic horror like Argento and certainly The Exorcist. I mean, The Exorcist, Christ, freaked me out. It still freaks me out. But no, once, like Nightmare on Elm Street and all the shit from the 80s, 90s, and even the current product, it just doesn't speak to me. I don't know. And I don't want to be scared. I mean, I know it's a thrill ride, but I'm just like, yeah, it's all right. It's not for me. So, and it's a shame because I've gotten to meet really interesting people that I've worked with, like Eli Roth and other people and stuff, and I've loved meeting them at cons. But yeah, it's funny. It's like, I'm not really interested, so I'll pass.
It's not your thing.
No,
Modern day horror movies, modern day Planet of the Apes movies, just not for you.
Well, I just haven't been convinced yet, and the second one didn't intrigue me as much as, like I said, the third one looked a little more interesting.
Well, you have to see the second one
to understand the third one.
Yeah, it's a continuity.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, in the originals, you have to see them in order too, right? Like,
true. Yeah, for the most part, yeah, I would agree with that. Although, again, they kind of wrap around themselves and end up in the past. I mean, that's like, come on, in Battle, the fifth movie, you got Paul Williams and Roddy McDowall with guns.
Yeah,
the least likely duo to be in an action movie.
They played a Paul Williams song at the end of a Mrs. Maisel episode that I was watching last night, and it was it made me so happy.
I'm excited.
Mrs. Maisel, right?
Yes, and I saw that the new season. You see, I figured, Tone, that along, and we'll get back to your comics. You know that,
sure,
and okay. Everything. But and Word Balloon listeners are certainly used to the fact that we go into tangents about other pop culture shit. Here's how ridiculous it is. I've only watched 2 episodes of Mandalorian. I've loved it. It's great, but I have a feeling I'll watch a couple more. I'll watch a couple of the new Ms. Maisels before I get back to the Mandalorian this week. Because I love that show. I love that so much.
Yeah, it's like they made a show just for you, I think. Like, and it's sort of, it fits a perfect niche for you because, like, you're not going to watch Gilmore Girls or like Bunheads, but now you can watch this, and then it gives you something you can talk to Bendis about. You guys have a pop culture thing that you share.
It's true, and
you're talking about Love Boat, and he's just to sit there quietly for 20 minutes.
Well, and, he's a liar because he knows all this shit. He just likes to make it. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah, shut up. You're not that much younger than me. Of course you know. But also, no, you're right, Ms. Maisel. It's about stand-up in the 1950s in New York. Yeah. Lenny Bruce is a side character on the show, as you know. And, I am fascinated by, again, that's why I had Bernie Capel on. Good Lord. Like I said, the guy worked with, Buck Henry and Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner. He did Dick Van Dyke and things like that. And also the Dick Van Dyke writers, Persky and Denoff, did That Girl. Maisel is like perfect as far as all the subject matter and location. I love the fact that her father works for Bell and Howell, which was like, the Apple of the 50s and 60s as far as being like a tech company, like a really high-end tech company. So
the Super 8 camera that I used to have.
Yes. Yeah. Or they made a bunch of movies, I believe, with Disney, and they're online, where they were pseudoscience movies for kids. And on rainy days or like the end of the school year when they were out of the curriculum and just decided to give us a day and watch a movie, they had things like it explained how the heart works, and it was called Hemo the Magnificent. Watch that, kids. And it's
Hemo the Magnificent is on Disney Plus?
I don't know if it's on Disney Plus, but it was definitely... It was either Bell Telephone or Bell and Howell in association with Disney making these instructional educational films. And it's like a reporter, interviewing a scientist. Well, doctor, exactly how does the heart work? Well, Jim, I'm glad you asked. And all of a sudden they'll cut to like animation of inside your body, and it's a bunch of muscle men pumping your heart. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And it's cheesy, glorious fun. It's the kind of shit that Pee Wee used to make fun of on his show. But they're great. They're fantastic. Movies like that.
Nice.
And so like, again, a Bell and Howell company working for tomorrow, today, that kind of thing. With the Betty Miller, Bell and Howell, working tomorrow, today, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, as we remember.
Maisel, he does not work there anymore. I don't want to spoil it for you.
Okay, well, I know he was bummed because he didn't have enough security clearance, and his son actually had a higher security clearance at the company than he did, and it was pissing him off. That was great stuff. No, it's a very funny show, and it's so funny.
Bruce, in the new season, Lenny Bruce just had a scene that nearly brought tears to my eyes. It was so good.
Cool.
They really know how to stick it in and turn the knife sometimes on that show. Like, you just be laughing along, and then they just really come through and hit you with some
dramatic stuff.
Some feelings.
Yeah. No, it's and again, that period of stand-up is fascinating because it really was like daring to be different and breaking new ground. God, did you see that the British comedian Jonathan Miller passed away a week or two ago, and he was part of Beyond the Fringe, which was where Dudley Moore and Peter Cook came from, and Jonathan Miller and Alan Bennett was the fourth one. God, I'm really glad I remembered the fourth guy's name. But the Pythons were still in college because these guys were classmen ahead of them, and Beyond the Fringe was like the first stab at British satire before Python, and Python really kind of followed through, and they were the next phase after Beyond the Fringe. And it was this massive success in England. It came to America and was a massive success. And that's kind of where hip comedy came from, in a different vein than what Lenny Bruce was doing and stuff. So, it's a really interesting time when we went from Take My Wife Please and, the Henny Youngmans and the one-liners and, but seriously, good evening, ladies and germs, shit like that. So, it's like, okay, that's cool. And again, all those albums were dusty albums when I was a little kid, so they were my first exposure to comedy. And then in the 70s, I loved the good sketch comedy from National Lampoon and guys like, Fire Sign Theater. So a lot of that informed my comedy taste. And, obviously leading into Saturday Night Live and the early sketch work of Saturday Night Live. So
I like how she, in the early season, that's what she wants to do is the comedy that she's writing for her husband is that sort of take my wife please, joke, other joke. And then when she starts doing it herself, she gets into a more personal, more narrative, autobiographical sort of take on it. And nobody's really doing anything like that. And it's sort of interesting to see that happening, in a fictionalized way, but it's interesting to see that. Anytime there's a big transition, I think that's an interesting story to watch.
It's exciting, absolutely, man. And especially, there were a few women alongside Lenny Bruce. Literally, Phyllis Diller was a pioneer like that. And Joan Rivers was a pioneer like that. So,
I've sort of, I think about this as sort of like the Joan Rivers show, like a fictionalized show about Joan Rivers.
Pretty much. Yeah. No, and and again, it's always sad when we're young and we see some of these comedians in their twilight years, and we're really not getting their best stuff. And it's whatever, Joan Rivers, I see her on E! Doing the red carpet shit, and she's kind of funny or whatever. And it's no, man, you don't know, because you go back to the 60s, and she was right there with Bill Cosby and Woody Allen, sadly, two Me Too examples that maybe, unfortunately.
She was not right there with Bill Cosby.
Yeah, exactly. No, not in the same room. Well, they were in the same room. It was just on stage rather than backstage or in a hotel room or anything like that. But no, she was getting started alongside them. And again, it was as we know, they had to work twice as hard because they were women. And it's and they had to be twice as good to be recognized. There's on Amazon Prime, I don't know if it's still there, but she had a New York talk show, and I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't called the Joan Rivers Show, but and it was like a daytime talk show where she was doing a monologue and interviews and stuff, and it's great, and it's Joan Rivers literally at her peak, in her prime.
Yeah.
So it's pretty, and that's why I love Ms. Maisel. Ms. Maisel's amazing.
She was still pretty great up until the end. The E! Stuff was what it was, but she would go on Howard Stern and just kill. She was hilarious up, into her, whenever she died, she was in her late 80s or, she was
something
still
like that, but
super, super funny and
still hustling. Because that documentary about her was fascinating at the end. So you're right. Actually, that's a bad example because I agree with you. I think she was still edgy and still very tough at the end. She was, and once again, another bad Me Too person, Louis, on FX. Her episode with Louis was fantastic. Oh my God. And she's just getting in his face. He's all bummed out because, he was making fun of the casino that he was working at and they were pissed. And she's like, what are you, stupid? They sign your checks. Don't be an asshole. And it's there's a time and place and maybe not when you're in their room to make fun of them. Yeah. Maybe that's a good comedy lesson or whatever. So, it's very funny. But
she was great. She definitely, she had plenty of breaks, I guess, but she definitely deserved more breaks than she got. And the reason people, think of her and they think of E! Is because that's who would give her a steady gig, and just that's the forum that she wound up in. But she could have been, she could have been a Letterman or, could have been doing anything like that.
You're right. And if she was 10 or 20 years younger, probably would have gotten more respect and even been more of a hero for a longer period of time. But you're right. No, you're absolutely right about all that, man. Well, and look at Chelsea Handler getting her late night show on E! And stuff like that again. And it's oh wow, pay attention to this person. She's actually really good.
But it also could be, you just run up against the wrong person, like that lady that made Designing Women and just pissed off that dickbag at CBS, and then he just ruined her career for 20 years.
I hadn't heard that story. That's Linda Bloodworth Thompson, who was tight with the Clintons. I didn't know that happened to her. Wow. Yeah. Was it Leslie Moonves that she pissed off? Figures. Man, that's so interesting.
She was trying to say, like, this guy is trying to ruin my career, and they're like, what? What are you talking about? And then they're like, oh, he's a scumbag? Maybe you're right.
Yeah. Yikes. Jesus.
So now I think she's doing a show now. I think she's got a streaming show. So hopefully, there's this Kanye interview where he talks about being able to do your important work when you're in your prime, and you always worry about that. Like, now that she has an opportunity, she's still going to have it. I feel like she probably will. That Designing Women's great.
Oh, God, yeah, I agree with you. No, I loved that show back in the day. You know what disappointed me? And I've talked a little bit about it a few times on the air. The new rebooted Murphy Brown really disappointed me.
I did not watch it. It was on, like, the CBS app, or what was it?
It was on the network. It was on the regular CBS network as well. And it is on CBS All Access. But it was sad. And it's so funny because I think it's Antenna TV runs the old version from the 90s. And that was sharp and funny, and I think still works, even though the references are, 30 years old now and stuff. But, a lot of Dan Quayle vice president jokes and, and Clinton jokes and everything through the 90s. But it was like watching seventh graders do like their version of Murphy Brown, and it's like, and every joke is way too broad. And Diane English, the creator of Murphy Brown, she is really, really smart and a great writer, and not only made Murphy Brown, but other really smart television over the years before Murphy Brown. And it really bummed me out. I'm like, oh, this should be sharper and funnier. And they just hit you over the head with the most obvious Trump sucks and all that stuff. And I mean, I'm not a Trump fan. I mean, they had me as an audience, but I was certainly willing to hear new spins. Also, the new Will and Grace really bummed me out, too. I just didn't think it was as funny as the regular show.
I didn't watch that either. There's a new Mad About You that you have to have, like, Spectrum, like Time Warner. I'm not sure how you watch it, but I don't know how I feel about that either. I was most excited for, and talk about Me Too bummers, I was most excited for the Roseanne reboot, because I loved Roseanne. Like, that shit was so good. And, I hadn't been paying attention because I'm just in my privilege, I didn't know she was crazy. Like, I was just like, oh, Roseanne's coming back? And I sort of heard inklings that she was conservative. But then they said, like, we're going to talk about that, and it's going to be like a discussion of, what America's like. Oh, interesting. And then, boy, oh, boy.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, I agree, man.
Well, even the first episode was like, oh, this could be interesting, but that was right before she went and blew up. But I saw the first episode and was like, oh, this could be an interesting thing. But then I feel like it was right around that same time or maybe it happened right before the first episode. I don't know.
Oh, no. I mean, no, there were like 2 or 3 episodes before the Ambien thing happened, and she said the inappropriate shit. And again, man,
generous that you're calling it the Ambien thing.
Well, that's her excuse, but I was going to say, yeah, man, again, in the latest bout in the hospital, I was on Ambien. I didn't wake up at 3 in the morning and start, you know what's wrong with the Italians? Let me tell you. It's like, what?
Oh, it's okay. He's had Ambien, the racist drug.
I know. God, and I've heard her on Joe Rogan's show since. Uh-huh. I give Joe Rogan a lot of credit, and I don't agree with a lot of his politics or his point of view, because he leans towards the NASA deniers, and I'm just like, oh, come on, man. Really?
Yeah, he's like one of these libertarian types where he's just keep an open mind on everything, and it's just like, we'll hear everybody out.
Which I give, and again, that's my point. I give him credit for hearing everybody out, because he's even more welcoming than I'll confess I can be sometimes, and where I'm just like, no, you know something, man, I'm sorry. I think you're coming from a place of hate, and I just don't feel like giving you the platform, rather than being like, well, okay, let's hear what your deal is.
Thing. That's the thing, is he wants to hear people out. That's fine, but you're also at the same time like giving them an enormous platform where everybody else has to hear him too. And then there's susceptible kids, that are just like, oh, you know what? Did you see Knives Out?
Not yet. I really, really want to. Yeah, I'm hearing great things about. Tell me.
It's super good, but there's a kid. There's like a 13, 14-year-old kid in there that's just been radicalized by Twitter and the internet, YouTube and stuff. He's just like a little MAGA kid. And it's just such a, like, I look at that kid and I'm just like, yeah, it's a thing. Like, these kids are just on YouTube. All my nieces and nephews are on YouTube. And if I watch one Joe Rogan, like Artie Lang was on Joe Rogan, I was like, well, I want to hear what he's been up to. And then my algorithm is immediately fucked. And it's just like, oh, did you like the Artie Lang on Joe Rogan? Here's Ben Shapiro. And, it's just like, oh. Cool.
I hear you, man. No, I understand. You're right about all that. By the way, I heard Artie Lang on Rogan as well. Yeah, it was a great conversation.
It was great. You get Joe Rogan from both sides, though, because he does entertainment and he does, like, boxing and fights, right?
Yeah, he obviously, being an MMA analyst, he does more MMA, but occasionally he does boxing. He had Holyfield on recently. It was amazing. I know he had Deontay Wilder. Although, again, now isn't it interesting? Just like he was kind to Roseanne and really made her comfortable, speak your mind, that's fine. Deontay Wilder, he fights Tyson Fury. And, do you know about that fight from or 2 Decembers ago? Or no, it wasn't last December.
I don't know a thing about a thing.
Well, he's one of the heavyweight champions. And like the classic Rocky Marciano, this guy is not the greatest boxer, but he has one-punch knockout power. And he fought that crazy British guy, Tyson Fury. And I don't mean to be rude when I say crazy, but he has had emotional issues. And it's the truth. And he even admits it. And truly, now he's on medication and he's much better. And I've gained more respect for him than I had when he initially hit the scene. And they fought a really tough fight. And in the last round, Deontay Wilder cracked off a right hand and knocked him out. And everybody thought that this guy was going to be out cold. And if they had stopped the fight, nobody would have complained. And at the count of 3, just like a wrestling WWE event, his eyes popped open and he sat up and he beat the count, the British guy.
Yeah.
And he had outboxed Wilder enough to deservedly earn a draw. But when Rogan had Wilder on, he's like, oh, they should have stopped it. And I'm like, oh, you are so full of shit, Joe. Shame on you. You're only doing that because your guest. That's when boxers piss me off. And if they don't own up to a loss or a draw and say, you know something, I didn't do enough. Or I got, like Anthony Joshua, the British guy, he just won back his title this weekend as we're talking from the guy who beat him. And when he lost, he's like, hey, I got knocked out. And I didn't prepare for this guy. Shame on me. I'll do better next time. And he did. And it's like, okay, that's, just own up to, no one's perfect. Shit happens. But Deontay Wilder's too little. What's that?
You got to know how to take an L.
Yeah, totally. But Deontay Wilder, he's just, he's got a lot of bravado for a guy that's only fought 2 or 3 really elite heavyweights and built his record on a lot of bumps. And it's because there are a lot of bumps in the heavyweight division. So it's easy to do that. And it's just like, hey, when you beat a few more guys, and now he has. So I'm like, all right, Deontay Wilder's real, and he's got one-punch knockout power. They're going to rematch him and the British guy later at the beginning of 2020. But yeah, so anyway, Joe Rogan. But I still love his podcast, and I haven't learned. I'm interested when he has Tulsi Gabbard on, the presidential candidate and stuff. So
people love that Tulsi Gabbard. There's like a certain type that are really into that Tulsi Gabbard.
Well, I'm not into her. I was interested in her initially. I don't like when, and I guess they have to snipe at each other to, raise their own profile. I had the same problem with Kamala Harris when she was yelling at Joe Biden about 1973 busing. And I'm like, really? And again, it's shame on me. I'm not a person of color. I didn't experience it firsthand, as I'm sure she did. But when she's like, well, you were working with, cracker Southern Democrats to get things done. And it's like, well, yeah, because they were in the Senate. And sometimes you have to work with people who are assholes to move an agenda along and find compromise. There was that great play and HBO movie about Lyndon Johnson called All the Way.
Yeah.
All about trying to get the Civil Rights Act passed. And, Lyndon Johnson is up against even worse Southern Democrats who absolutely had no interest in advancing the cause of black people. And Lyndon Johnson had to find a way to make them vote properly and be like, look, do you want to be right today or do you want to be right 100 years from now and be a real pioneer? And it was just those kind of hard conversations. And that's why it's like there's it used to be called realpolitik. And you can understand what the definition of that is, obviously. And it's just like, again, Kamala Harris is trying to score points. And wow, look at Joe Biden. I don't know. Do you want that guy? And it's like 1970.
To be fair, John, she wasn't saying that he shouldn't have worked with them. She was saying that today, to go out and celebrate them ignores the part where the shitty shit that they did.
I didn't think he personally, I didn't think he celebrated them.
He did. That's what she was mad about. He was at something and he was telling stories about how.
What he said.
We all used to work together, and he didn't call me boy, but he called me son, or whatever.
Well, but you see, I took it as, hey, we got it done despite these guys, and I found a way to reason with them. And It's like, yeah, he did. And you know something? Unfortunately, back then, shit was that ugly. At least, that was my point of view on it.
Back then.
And that's why I'm like, hey, come out. Well, and again, he was talking about then, and again, and I guess saying, hey, if I got it, I'll be able to compromise. Look what I did back then. And, again, I just felt like she twisted it around. Like, yeah, look what you did back then. And it's like, well, nothing would have gotten done by being smug and being like, I'm not going to even deal with these guys. They're assholes. And it's like, well, yeah, but they're enough of a portion of the Senate that you got to work with them. So what do you do?
You showed her, John.
Well, again, now she's out of the race, and that's why I'm like, all right, whatever. And I have a feeling she'll be one of the vice presidential candidates, and I think she'd be a great vice president, frankly.
I like her quite a bit. I voted for her a couple of times because she's my senator. Yeah.
I loved her in the Kavanaugh hearings, man. I thought she was tough as nails, and I like that.
Yeah, I don't know what committee people sit on. But I'm always hoping that one of the good question askers will pop up, because most of the time you watch these hearings and trials and stuff, and you're just like an unending sea of people with horrible presentation. You're just like, how did you get elected? Like, what is your electorate that you? This is the sort of shit that you're spewing. And then you get like a Kamala that just comes in and cuts right through, and you're like, oh, this lady knows what she's doing.
Well, and as a centrist, I like Klobuchar, and I know she'll probably not get the nomination, but I like her because I think she was tough. And I think, and I've seen her in committees, and I think has been tough without, getting her point across without being, again, the Kavanaugh stuff. I thought she was great with that. And he was being a complete jerk to her. And
tough,
she's
but
just
nice. She's Minnesotan.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. No, I hear you, man. No, it's sadly a very interesting. We live in interesting times, as the proverb used to say, and it's like, what are you going to do? Anyway,
sure do.
Anyway, back to you. So, are you doing what other all ages stuff are you doing? Because of course you've got a great, a resume and a lot of great all ages comics and stuff. And I always like teasing that you're one of my favorite My Little Pony people, and you truly are. But I know the real Tony Fleecs, so it's like, you want me to drop fucking Pinkie Pie? Hold on a second. Let me put my cigarette down. I'll drop fucking Pinkie Pie for you.
Listen, that's not me talking. I love to drop Pinkie Pie, and I respect her. I respect her.
No, and it's not that you don't respect her. It's just like, okay, kid, no problem. Here's Pinkie Pie, no problem.
Yeah, no, I'm working on ponies still. I've been drawing that for 8 years almost.
Outstanding, man. That's great.
Just an incredible run. Like everybody else that I know in comics, they'll work on one thing and then that'll go away and then they'll work on another thing. I've just had this steady sort of regular job for these 8 years. And the show just ended this year. And so right now they're doing like a season 10, sort of like they do with Buffy.
Sure.
So it'll go on for at least another year. After that, I don't know, how much longer it's going to go on for. I keep thinking that, every time I get an email that it's a job, that'll be the last issue I do. But so far it seems to be, it just keeps on rolling. And that's great because it's sort of like my day job and then making these comics of my own or my night job. And it sort of works out where I can make comics full time and manage to live on it.
Attaboy.
Because of Pony.
No, that's the dream, man. Doing what you want to do and being able to do it full time.
Yes.
And enjoy what you do. Absolutely, man. And that's a great, again, I'm you and Andy Price and Katie Cook, all of you guys. I'm thrilled that, again, I know your senses of humor and and that's the beauty of Friendship is Magic, that version of My Little Pony, that it really comes through and it's comedy on two levels. Kids love it and everything, and the adults are like, oh, I see what they're doing. That's fantastic.
Yeah, sometimes you slip some stuff in there, but also like I just love the process of making comics so much that the subject matter is almost secondary to the process of sitting down, laying out a page, penciling a page, and coloring all the parts of it. And sometimes I'll do the full art. I've written issues, but for the most part I draw them, and sometimes I'll color them. Do the whole thing, and every part of that is like my favorite job I've ever had. And so even if it's like a particularly stupid script, or just like not stupid, but for super for this one's only for children. There's no two sides to this one. It's just like perfunctory, and it's just got a couple jokes in it. And we're just going to get it out there. Even then, I can still find joy in my work because what I like doing is the process part.
Yeah. No, that's great, buddy. Yeah.
And that's worked out real well for me. And then now I get to do that, and then I have an outlet again for my, for stuff that's specifically my own sense of humor and my own style with Timeshopper. And then right now I'm working on another thing that we haven't announced yet, but it'll be next year, probably a year from now. You'll start hearing about it.
Cool.
But that's a book that we're doing at Image that's going to be like a 5-issue thing.
Outstanding. That's great to hear.
And the same deal, I'm writing it, and then Tone's laying it out, and somebody else is drawing it, and it's it's just a whole different thing.
Beautiful. That's great, buddy. No, I'm very excited. And so Tone Rodriguez is in your studio. Who else is over there?
Well, so Tone's like a satellite member because he's like I said, he's in Lafayette now. But he's like the
right, of course. Excuse me,
the founder of the studio, and then now in the studio in person is me, Chris Moreno, who's been here the whole time.
Yes, love Chris.
He's an art director right now on Muppet Babies.
Hilarious.
And then he comes in and does his comic book work or his freelance stuff here after hours. Drew Johnson, who did Rucka's Wonder Woman early on, and he just did the last thing he did was a Godzilla prequel to the last Godzilla movie with Vera Farmiga. Sure. And then Gus Vasquez just came in. He replaced Burnham, who just moved to Kansas City.
Burnham moved again, Chris Burnham?
Yeah, he's in Kansas City now with his kids and his lady, and he's out there with like Scotty and Jason Aaron and those guys. But to hear it told, he does not see anyone. He just is only at home with those kids.
Well, he was, when he was in Chicago and stuff, he'd come out socially. But yeah, for the most part, as far as studio stuff, no, he was there. So it doesn't surprise me he's a homebody working, and obviously he's got to take care of the kids. I understand. I miss Burnham. I love that guy.
Yeah, me too. And he is very, I don't want to say slow, but he's just very rigorous. And you look at his pages, and there's so much detail and so much thought put into them, and so he has to. It was great when he was here because I would do way more pages than him, but I'm very, I'm always in the studio. I'm always working. And the other guys who have families and kids and, I have a wife and I'll go see her, not as much as I should, but I'm married to the sea. I come here.
Thank you, Brandy. Yes, your life, your love, and your lady is the sea.
Exactly.
Yes.
But Burnham would be here often as well. He was, I could always count on him to be around because it would take him so long when he was working on. He did Nameless here, and he did the Kirkman book that he's doing now.
Right. Oh God, I got to check. Burnham is another guy that I got to check in with. I don't think I've had him on since he left Chicago, and when I see him at shows, I'm always happy to see him. So he's so funny. He's a
good dude.
Yeah, hilarious, man. You're killing me.
He doesn't. He never has to promote his stuff. That's also probably why you haven't heard from him, is because all the stuff that he does, it'll be with the biggest name people, and so it just sells itself.
Yeah, Joe Casey with Nameless, and like you said, the new Kirkman thing and everything, and he was doing Batman Incorporated with Grant and everything. So
Grant Morrison was Nameless, even bigger.
Oh, I forgot. You're right. That's right. What was the Joe Casey thing that they did?
Joe Casey was Officer Down and Nixon's pals.
Yes,
his early stuff, and then Joe Casey.
Yeah. That's right. It was pre-Grant. That's right.
Joe Casey hooked him up with Grant.
That's insane. Of course he did. That's great. No, I love Burnham. He's a smart, funny dude, and cracks me. I know when he was doing is it Amory or Armory Wars?
Amory Wars.
Amory Wars, and Claudio Sanchez from Cohiba and Cambria?
Coheed and Cambria, yeah.
Coheed and Cambria. See, I always think of the cigar.
Yeah.
Instead of Coheed. and seriously, man, I have never felt more like OK Boomer than when I met Claudio Sanchez. And I'm like, oh yeah, man, you're doing your music and your comics. Hey, that's great. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I'm not listening to your music, but God bless you and everything. And it's like, do you realize who you just talked to? And I'm like, no, not really. And people explain. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Oh, like stadiums? Okay.
Exactly. Or, God, Vernon would have the funniest stories about, just the Coheed and Cambria fans that would come and to cons and want his autographs on their comics and stuff. And he's just like, yeah, cool, whatever. But yeah, it was so, and he's, it's like, hey, Claudio could be on your show sometime. I'm like, I don't know what I did. I talked to him about. I'm really not a fan of his music. And I don't mean any disrespect, but, I just kind of like the people and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, maybe not. And it's like, dumbass, what are you doing? They got thousands of fans. They would listen. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to half-ass it. I really, honestly, I try not to half-ass it. Yeah, I'm sure I do occasionally.
Well, I feel like that's why we haven't spoken for. I think the last time we talked was like 2013, and it's because I've just been.
Tone, is that true?
My Little Pony.
Is it really been that long? I'm so sorry, buddy. And that's the other thing. I see my friends at shows.
Yeah.
And I think in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, it hasn't been that long. I mean, I just saw the guy, and it's like, actually, it's been a really long time. Chris Gage. Just had Chris Gage back, and it had been like 6 years since he's been on the show.
It's his anniversary this weekend, Facebook tells me. He and Ruth. Happy anniversary, Gages.
Yes, I saw those pictures. I know. Isn't that adorable?
We all get on Facebook. But yeah, no, there's all kinds of people who, like, I went on 11 O'Clock Comics, and I'm talking to you, and it's just all these people that I am friends with, but I haven't gone on their shows because they don't read My Little Pony, so I wouldn't have. They would just be like, what have you been up to? And I could say My Little Pony, and they'd go like, okay, good, like,
well, yeah, Valentine. Oh God, no, what's his last name? God, that great. He works on Bitch Planet with. Kelly Sue.
Dazrio? I don't know.
Well, I want to say Delandro, but like, I think I'm mixing him with Chris Delandro, the PR guy in comics. But Valentine, I love that guy. And forever he was on X-Men, like second-tier X-Men books. And I'm like, Val, I love your art. You're such a sweetheart of a guy, but I'm not reading X-Men books, so I just don't feel like – I always feel like I'm half-assing. Or even Mike Perkins when he was doing with Marjorie Liu. And they were doing big X-Men books and stuff. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, man, I'm not reading the X-Men, so I don't want to just say, yeah, that's great. You did that X-Men book. Okay.
Delandro.
It is Delandro. Okay, it is Delandro, Valentine. Yeah, Val's amazing. He's a brilliant artist, and he's such a sweetheart of a guy, and I love talking to him. But yeah, I always have to wait for the next volume of Bitch Planet when it's like, okay, I'm reading this.
Right.
Like, let's talk, Val. Good.
I'm
so happy for you.
So you're not reading the Hickman X-Men?
I'm really not. I'm going to. And
what do they have to do to break through to you? Did you read the Bendis X-Men?
I did.
Okay.
And I read when Matt and Brubaker were writing X-Men. I was reading then. I will read it, and good Lord, I've certainly heard the praises. And actually, Dave Harper did a great interview with John about the X-Men and everything. And I guess it was John was quite controversial, apparently. So he's like, yeah, Marvel wants me to take it easy for a while and come back when I got to create our own thing, and we'll talk about everything. And I'm like, okay, no problem. That's fine. So yeah, I mean, it's just, and I have to admit, there are core. I love what Zdarsky's doing in Marvel right now. I think that's great stuff. I love what Matt Rosenberg's doing in Marvel right now. I think that's great stuff. Slott, of course, I always love his stuff. I love Mark Waid's stuff. So there are a handful of Marvel writers that I do follow.
Do you read Thor?
Yes, of course. Jason was amazing. Yeah, Jason.
Very good. One more issue.
I know. I know I got to bug Jason. I haven't had him on in a couple of years. You see, there, like Jason Aaron. Hey, there's a top writer.
Yeah.
And we're friends. And it's like, how come I haven't had Jason on forever?
You want to talk about Star Wars that I draw?
I did want to get to Star Wars, so let's get into that right now. Yes, indeed. Tell me what you're doing right now in the Star Wars universe.
So the stuff that's coming out right now, like currently I'm working on ponies, but the comics that are coming out in stores right now is the last part of my Star Wars Adventures run.
Yep.
It's a 3-issue run that I did with Mike Marici. That is.
Oh, that's great. Chicago's very own Mike Marici, absolutely.
Yeah, Chicago's hometown hero, who like started making Star Wars comics, like fan comics, and now makes the real ones. Which incredible move. Like when he was doing those fan comics, I was always like, "What is this fucking guy doing?" But then it really worked out. So good deal. And he's great. Like I'm a big fan of his work. Like I like working with him. So that's real good. But yeah, we did this 3-issue thing that sort of leads up to the Rise of Skywalker, the new one. But it's the kids, it's the Star Wars Adventures, so it's just like ours is a little adventure with R2-D2 and C-3PO and BB-8, and it's sort of like some stuff that happens in between the Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker. And then
Gotcha.
Star Wars Adventures books are usually two stories. So the front part is Derek Charm and John Barber do a Wookiee story, and they introduce the character that Pippin, I think it's Pippin, whatever the guy from Lost and The Hobbit is in Star Wars now. His character gets introduced in their comics, and then in the backup stories where me and Marici are doing droids. So the third part of that comes out either this week or next week, sometime before the movie, hopefully, unless I screwed up our release schedule.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. That's been terrific, and isn't it interesting that Marvel turned that over to IDW doing the all ages Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, I mean they license out the Disney comics to other people too.
True.
And they license out Marvel kids comics to IDW as well. Like they do the Kids Avengers and Kids Spider-Man comic. And I think IDW just sort of made a lane for themselves where they can make money on all ages books, and they just sort of showed everybody else like this is how you do it. And I think because they have those books and they don't have they have the Kids Avengers, they don't have the big Avengers. So when they put out an Avengers book, it's the one that they're putting out, So it's just like they can sort of put all their push behind it, their advertising. When you see ads for like the Marvel Action Adventures at Marvel or whatever it was called when I was at Marvel, it would be alongside ads for the other Avengers. So you're just like, oh, this is a book that they're putting out. And I think when IDW does it, it's like this is like a big book that we're putting, like it's a big deal. And then they put time. I mean, every comic that gets made, somebody put time in it to make it. But I feel like they really take pride in making good comics for kids, which, in the comic book industry seems like a crazy thing to do. But then when you step back and you look at the actual world of books and publishing and graphic novels and stuff, it's just like, oh, that's where that's where all the money is making these comics for kids, Dogman and Reign of Terror and manga,
Well, of course. And again, this is what starts them in the habit of reading comics. And that's why I've been happy that DC has done such a push with those YA graphic novels and stuff. And it's smart. Because again, that's where the kids are, and go through Scholastic and things like that to get that kid audience as much as in the stores. And no, that's terrific, and I'm very happy for IDW and what's happened. I remember a couple of years ago when Katie was doing one of her pony books, and she said on her panel, "I beat the X-Men." in here because they're number one, outsold the X-Men number one or whatever. And she's like, yeah, it was great. And then, totally, man. So no, like I said, man, I'm really happy for my friends that are working on these YA comics and stuff, and I think it's great.
Yeah, we talk to parents and we talk to kids. When I go to a bigger convention, I'll almost invariably meet somebody whose kids either learn to read on it, or it's like one of the first few things they read, and we don't make, just like Stan Lee, we don't write down to the kids. Like it just has whatever words are going to be in it. It's not like big fonts or, not like board books. But these kids are reading these comics and sort of like, it's the early fundamental part of their journey in reading. Hopefully every year I get older, I get more and more cynical about young people, which I think is just normal,
Sure.
I've gotten not even an argument, but just like a friend of mine that's a few years older than me was mad at some musician on the internet last night, and I was just like, you're so old, our parents thought that the stuff we listened to was crap, and we think the new stuff is crap, and their grandparents, it's just like, it's how it works. You were just saying that, like, you like the Planet of the Apes movies from when you were a kid because that's what made an impact. Like, it's hard for stuff to break through our sort of like crusty old, tastes and reach our hearts. When you're a kid, you're so open to things. And then that like imprints, and then that becomes the stuff that you love. So it's wild to be working on stuff that specifically is the stuff that kids are reading and loving. And, like they show up with, like their copies, when it's their comics, not like their dad keeps them for them and they're in a bag and board, but they just hand me these sloppy, beat up, ripped up comics that they want signed. It's just like, oh, awesome. Like this is a comic that somebody's read a million times.
It's a well-read. I understand, man. I always love telling the story, and forgive me, listeners, if you're sick of hearing this, but my jock of an ex-brother-in-law, and he's a good guy, but he really, like, my youngest nephew wasn't reading. And I started giving him comics, and he got excited about comics. And I was giving him the DC animated stuff and a few other things, and he was loving it, especially the Teen Titans comic book when it was coming out at the same time as the first Cartoon Network Teen Titans. He loved it. Now he's in his 20s, but this is when he was a little kid. Yeah. And my brother-in-law's like, he's a little more of a jock. He's really not into the nerd thing. And I'm like, didn't you guys tell me that he was having trouble with reading? He's like, yeah. And I go, well, he's reading these. Yeah. And I go, he seems to like them, and now he seems to like reading. And he literally took a half beat and said, you're right, I'm sorry, never mind. And he said, thank you. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, hey, man, I like sports too. I go, but guess what? Reading is reading. I mean, it's the truth. Whatever helps get kids read, that's a positive. And truly, this is the lesson of Will Eisner. I mean, the guys in the Army weren't reading the technical manuals, and, Will Eisner had the brilliant idea. How about making them comics, these technical manuals? And it all worked. Yeah. And they're like, you're a genius. You've got to, for the next 20 years, we want you making comics for the Army. And it's like, no problem. Man. Crazy. Well, this is, these are the great success stories that, again, comics are magic. As to bring it back to the ponies.
Friendship, comics, all of it. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. No, that's wonderful. And I'm glad that, the run is wrapping up. Are you psyched for Star Wars?
Oh, yes. Super excited. I'm in my heart, like, Star Wars is my favorite thing. Okay. And I, even when the prequels were coming out, and I saw the episode 1 opening night of Midnight Show, and for years was able to tell myself, like, that was pretty good, like, pretty good. And the whole rest of the world was just universally like, it's garbage, it's trash. And to this day, I'll just be like, look, they shot it on film. It looks cool. I find things to like about it.
That's the little kids. I mean, that's your first Star Wars movie for little kids who, it's episode 1, so for them it is the first story. Yeah. And I can totally appreciate being under 10 years old and being like, this is amazing. Look at what this kid is doing in this movie. And Balthazar's kids grew up on the prequels, and they love them. Again, it's a different story for them.
I would bet the age difference between you and I, you don't give a shit about Ewoks, and I love
Hated the Ewoks. The Ewoks.
Yeah, that's a specific, like a 10-year
generation gap. Yeah, the generation gap, absolutely, man.
I'm 1979, so by the time
I'm
Jedi
15 years older than you, yeah, man.
I see an Ewok, and I'm just like, this is incredible. There's stuffed animals are in Star Wars now. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And that still lives inside my heart. Like when I see Ewok content, there's this picture on the internet, spoilers, of just Warwick Davis dressed up as an Ewok, but it's grown-up Warwick Davis. So you're just like, is he in the fucking Star Wars as an Ewok?
That'd be great. I hope that happens. I do hope that happens. I'm
freaking out.
Yeah, that would be cool. That's amazing.
So yeah, like this, I tell everybody that Star Wars is like the beginning and end of my bucket list in comics. As far as work for hire goes, it's Star Wars. It was just like, wow. I just want to contribute something to Star Wars. Have, years after I'm gone, if somebody digs into my bibliography, they'll just be like, oh, this guy made Star Wars. That's all I really need. I don't have like an X-Men story that I'm burning to tell. I don't have like a Spider-Man story. I love those things, but Star Wars is my heart. And so
that's outstanding.
Like, when I got that gig, it was huge, and it was stupid too because it was one of these few times where there just wasn't a pony issue that month for me to draw, and so I sent an email to all the editors that I'd worked with, and I was like, "Hey, you got anything?" And Denton, who edits Star Wars, wrote me back, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we can put you on Star Wars. We got one or two of them." And I was just like, it was like he was just. It was basically like they said, like, well, we found $1 million you could have. I was just like, what? Star Wars? And he was like, yeah, do you want to do this one or this one? I was like, well, could I do both? And he was like, yeah, you could do both. And I was just like, what? Could I have done this the whole time? Did I just have to email you? Like, what's going on? And it turns out that he was just like, knew I was busy drawing ponies, and so he didn't ask anything. And I was just like, well, I would have been doing this for years. Like, I would have drawn Star Wars the minute I knew I could draw Star Wars.
That's fantastic, man.
But so, and then I did that first one, or the first two, and I was like, thank you so much for this opportunity. You never have to hire me again. Like, my bucket list is fulfilled. Thank you. And he was like, well, we got some more stuff we want. And I was like, well, that's great too. This is great. Everything's great. And so, yeah, and like, I'm super psyched for the new one. The last one has stuff in it that I'm sure, once the glow is gone and the anticipation, and like right now we're in the middle of a Star Wars cycle, right? Like, right. There were the prequels, now we're in the sequels. And so, like, I'm just in it. Like, I live in a world where they're still telling me the story of Luke Skywalker, and they're going to finish it up in a couple weeks. But until then, I'm still very excited about it. Like, it's my fucking thing. So yeah, I'm very excited. I've got like three tickets to see it within the first couple of days.
That's outstanding. Is your wife going to go with you, or is this just you?
Yeah, she's going. I have tickets for her at all three of them. I have tickets for her of all three of them. She has a real job, so she will at some point be like, I'm not going to that. I'm not doing 2 midnight shows in a row.
I understand. Did you like Solo? There's a movie that, even hardcore Star Wars fans kind of, it seems, have been divided about.
Now that The Mandalorian is on TV, I wish Solo would have been a TV show also.
That's a very good point. And I never thought of that, but you're right.
My issue with it is just, like, I can't get over that he's not Han Solo. Like, right. That's what I get hung up on. It's like your apes thing, It's just like you look at that guy and you go like, this is a good movie, but that's not Han Solo. Han Solo looks like this and talks like this, They had that other guy that like rumors were that they were going to try and cast this other guy that had played like, young Harrison Ford in another movie, and he looks exactly like him and talks exactly like him, like maybe, or they could just deep fake him in there, so I like Solo, and I would have, like, they set up a bunch of stuff in it, like sort of Disney story group stuff, we're just like, oh, there's plenty of Darth Maul and stuff. Yep. And so you want to see where all that's going, but yeah, I would have been much more apt to watch it if it was like a continuing adventures, like they put out, like they're doing Mandalorian, put out 8 episodes and then do another season later.
That makes sense. I've been calling him the George Lazenby of Star Wars. Exactly. and I mean no disrespect, because On Her Majesty's Secret Service, to me, is literally my favorite Bond movie, and George Lazenby's in it, and he's serviceable as James Bond, but he can't hold a candle to any of the other Bonds. He is clearly the least talented actor to play Bond, but again, I think he did fine, and it's the same thing with this Solo movie, but like you said, it was just timing, because going out on Force Awakens, I hated the way he went out, but before he dies, Harrison Ford is back, and it's one of the best Han Solo movies. He's so great in it, and he's just so naturally Han Solo again. Yeah. And that's why it hurt so much when he died in it. And I have to admit, that's my only other problem with the sequels, was the way they treated the core cast, including R2-D2, by the way.
Right. I think R2-D2 got the most disrespect out of everyone in these films.
Yeah. Literally, to be under a drop cloth when you introduce him back, it's like, oh, fuck you. And also, again, BB-8, is it BB-8 great? No, not really. Sorry.
Yes, it is, John. Come on. That little
He's a poor man's R2-D2. I'm sorry. And I know he's the one that JJ's going to make more money off of when it comes to the toys and all the product placement and everything. And I get it, but it's like, all right, why couldn't they have been together? Why couldn't it have been... sure. like in Creed, where Rocky is right there with Adonis Creed.
R2-D2 is training BB-8 how to do.
Hey, how you do it? Beep, beep, beep. Okay, I'm just saying, beep, bloop, beep.
Nobody loves R2-D2 more than I love R2-D2. He was the ring bearer in our wedding. Like, I'm a big, huge fan of R2-D2.
That's
I just
outstanding.
him for 3 issues in this book. He's very complicated to draw, and I loved every second of it. But I also love BB-8. I think he's just adorable. Now they're putting in a new, even smaller and cuter little droid in this new thing. I'm there for it. There's like a BB-8 to the BB-8, like a little, even littler, even cuter guy that looks like he has a cone for a head.
Right. Whatever.
His name's Dio.
Okay. Dio, like Ronnie James Dio. So he's
like
a heavy metal guy.
Yeah, he's a metal droid. Well, he's metal.
I'm totally into Dio. I don't think it's the same one. No, all right. That's great.
Well, I'm very excited for the movie. I haven't, for the last 2, after the first couple of trailers for Force Awakens, we shut everything down. We didn't watch anything. And for the last one, I didn't watch hardly anything leading up to it. It was a complete surprise, the whole thing. And this one, I haven't had the strength. I've watched basically everything that's come out. Although they keep putting out TV spots, and I'm doing pretty good at not watching those.
Good. Because, man, it's hard. No, I hear what you're saying. And the punditry, again, on YouTube, they kind of drive me crazy. Because they're already shitting on this movie, and it isn't even out yet.
Yeah, and then there's people whose whole deal is just figuring out spoilers and stuff, and they got reporters. And
Oh, yeah.
I try not, I know one thing about this thing, and as soon as I heard it, I was just like, oh, or even, knowing that there might be an Ewok in it, I'm just like, God damn it. What a great surprise that would have been. But then,
I hear you. Yeah,
I would have been like, yeah, is that Warwick Davis? It has to be, obviously. Who else?
That's outstanding. Oh man, I didn't know. And again, I'm hardcore on Star Trek. I've loved Star Wars, but I already had a girlfriend, and her name was Star Trek. So
right.
I just couldn't divide my love. But again, I really enjoy Star Wars, and no, I know exactly what you mean. Well, it was just like in between Infinity War and Endgame with the Avengers movies. And all these theories, maybe this is going to happen, maybe that's going to happen. And I was just like, shut up. I don't care what you're, because it's like, well, don't you want to talk about it? No, I don't want to speculate. I don't care. Whatever we come up with is not going to be the movie that the Russos are going to give us. I'm cool to wait. I'll wait for their story. I
love speculating, and I love, what they should have done. I love all that stuff. That's where, a lot of my ideas come from.
Well, that's fair.
Stuff. Is it just going like, oh, I wish they would have done this, and that's where Timeshopper came from. Fialkov had a time travel thing that he was talking to me about, and I was like, well, does he go shopping? And he was like, what? No, of course not. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's not that dumb, right?
That's fantastic, man. There's another guy I haven't had on forever. Josh, go on.
He's in TV now. You'll want to have him on, probably next year around this time. He'll have big stuff going on. Or
good for him.
Everything will have fallen apart like Hollywood does sometimes. And
plus, him and his wife do all the old Hollywood stuff too. And God, I love what she does.
Yeah, she's doing a book on, is it Barbara Stanwyck right now? No. Jane Russell? Jane Russell. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, wow, that's even a bigger name, because I remember when she did her Anne Dvorak book, which was totally forgotten from the 30s, and a big leading woman in the 30s. And when I met her, that's what she was telling me about. And I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. So, and yeah, man, no, I should have them both on and just shit about old Hollywood with them. That'll be great.
If you hadn't had Christina on, you should definitely have her. It's a Jane Russell biography. I think it's called The Outlaw. When that comes out, have her on, because you guys will be able to go hard. Because she goes old movies like Gabe and Karina.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's so funny. I was texting Gabe last night because there's a great Sinatra documentary that came out last year called Sinatra in Palm Springs, and it's not streaming anywhere, and you can only buy it through Vimeo, and either rent it through Vimeo or buy it directly. And I'm like, okay, so I bought it and I downloaded it and stuff, and it was $13 or whatever. And because I saw it in my hotel room, it was streaming on hotel TV, and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. And
or it was free.
I had to buy it, but it's excellent. It's fantastic, and I don't feel bad at all. I have a digital copy of it now. It's great because I love it.
There's a Paddy Chayefsky play that's like a recording of a play from way back in the day.
Sure.
It's on Amazon, but the only way to get it is to subscribe to this stupid streaming service that is just like all plays, which fine,
yeah.
I don't know how many I'm going to watch. Like, I just wish I could just buy this one because I give a shit about Patty Chayefsky, but
sure.
It vexes me all the time. Like, there's no other way to get a hold of it. There's no bootleg. It's just this sitting there on Amazon going like, well, you could just subscribe to this service and watch this thing. But then I'm like, well,
wow.
I got a Patty Chayefsky shelf. I want to put it on there. I can't. If it's on Amazon.
Right. No, I've done that with Serling. There's a lot of early Serling TV anthology stuff pre-Twilight Zone from the 50s and early 60s.
Yeah.
And he did a show called The Velvet Alley with Art Carney, who was a comedy writer, and it was all about, a comedy writer that breaks into television and gets seduced by the business, and the business eats him alive, and his old friend, he turns on his old friends. Jack Klugman is in it, and it's a drama, and it's a kinescope, so it's not the best quality, but like Warner Archives was selling it, so yeah, I got it because I'd always heard about it, and I wanted to see it. So
that's what you want. You want a Warner Archives at least, just make it available somehow.
Bernie Capel, when he was on, David Susskind, the old talk show host, was also a big television producer, and he actually owned the production company that made Get Smart, among other TV shows. And Bernie was saying he was about to do an onstage Q&A for a production from the 60s called of Death of a Salesman. And Lee J. Cobb, one of the great Hollywood classic actors, he plays Willie Loman in it. And it was going to be him and George Segal, and they both had really small roles in the production, but they were literally the only living people left in the cast. Wow. So that's why yeah. And again, I mean, he's rubbing shoulders with some of the Hollywood greats. Yeah. So yeah, it was, I can only imagine, and I would love to see that. So no, any of that golden age of television stuff, I'm there. And yeah, Patty Chayefsky, well before network, the guy's a genius. Yeah, the guy was just incredible.
Everything he did, I mean, I'll never reach those heights, but I definitely hold myself to those standards where just he didn't put something out that was half-assed. It was.
I'm with you, man.
And it might be just because he was a genius, but it also I feel like that was a dude that really worked and really went through and sort of made it, made sure that everything had feeling and felt authentic. And when I watch Maisel, I get strong early Chayefsky vibes off of that too, especially that family stuff. Was it The Wedding Party? He did one that also had Ernest Borgnine after Marty.
I don't know. After Marty, I don't know.
Wow. And it's a Warner Archive too, and it's like the daughter's getting married and the family can't afford to put on the wedding, but the mother thinks she needs to have this big crazy wedding, and Ernest Borgnine's the father, and he's going to sell his taxi medallion or whatever so that he can afford to.
I know what you're talking about. I believe it is The Wedding Party. Yes. Yeah. I do know that story. Yes.
But I get vibes like that from a lot of Maisel. Something definitely with the parents and the family. Yeah.
Oh God, no. I love what Tony Shalhoub is doing, and I love what's his face, Kevin Pollak. I think is great as the husband's, Joel's father and everything. No, it's they're and the mother's, her mother's interesting when she went off to Paris.
Yeah, her mother's story is so
and everything.
It's so interesting that I would watch a whole story just about her mother. And what her deal is, because just by Midge opening a crack into this doesn't have to be what this life is like, then it sort of blows her whole world up, and she's just oh shit, what have I been, does this make what I've done foolish or
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Yeah, I totally agree. Have you seen Irishman?
Yes, I went and saw it in the theater. I had to go see it in the theater.
Wow,
because I wasn't gonna. I know, if it's on my TV at my house, I will look at my phone or, get up and go get a drink or whatever. I wanted to really devote my full attention. So luckily, I live in a major market, so it played at the Egyptian. And me and a buddy went and saw it.
That's cool. That's cool. It was playing here in Chicago, but I just knew it was going to be on Netflix. So and also, I just haven't had time to go to movies and stuff, which is why I still haven't seen Knives Out or also Ford versus Ferrari. I really want to see, and I do want to see that in the theater.
Yeah, we go every week. We got there's an AMC pass where you can just go see 3 movies a week. And so I haven't seen Ford vs. Ferrari yet, but we saw Knives Out. Last week I saw Queen and Slim, and we're going to see Mr. Rogers this week. So we're trying to get through all of them.
That's awesome. No, that's great. What was
But Irishman,
go ahead. Irishman, yeah.
And like a similar vibe and sort of like that, was it all for nothing, like, what, have I wasted my life? Like, certainly not only did that guy waste his life, but he did horrible things, but it was just such like a perspective we hadn't seen before, where you get to see a guy at the very end just going like, oh shit, what a mess. Like, why did I do this? Or is he not thinking that? Like, it's not like he has an internal monologue, but is he thinking like, was this all worth it? Or is he just thinking like, it is what it is, because you have have to be like a sociopath almost to be able to murder people like he did. So absolutely.
And not have that haunt you or the ways that he does regret, obviously the relationship with his daughter and everything. No, it's, no, I thought it was epic. And also, like you were saying about Maisel and her mother and everything, just the way they live. And, God, for me, Irishman was like stepping into an old family photo album. And like I said, like, my family did know people that were bad people, but they weren't bad people, and they weren't involved in anything, criminal or anything like that. But they all lived the same. It didn't matter. They were all neighborhood people. And every one of those kitchens and living rooms and the beehive haircuts and the women smoking and stuff like that, I'm like, oh my God, it's my childhood. I mean, it really was like, I knew these people.
I love that detail of the women smoking outside the car, like, so great. Like, every time they cut back to it, it was almost like a laugh, like, eventually as the movie goes on and they build a rhythm with it, and then they cut back to them smoking outside, and you're just like, oh, for God's sake. Like, you get that, like, as a husband, too, you're just like, can we go? Please hurry up. And they're just like, well, we're going to smoke now. You're just like, oh, God damn it.
Absolutely.
And it was even these guys, like the Joe Pesci and that thing, the biggest, the
mobsters,
yeah. Even these people have to, stop the car and let their wives have a cigarette and sit there. It's so humanizing for these monsters.
100%, man. And God, Pesci is like watching a boxer come out of retirement and win a title, man. He was so good, and
so
everybody, and it's so funny because some people are like, I couldn't get the fact that I was watching Al Pacino out of my head when he's supposed to be what's his face, the Teamster.
Yeah,
shame on me. What's his name?
Jimmy Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa, of course. Yeah. Good Lord. And I really loved DeVito's Hoffa movie with Jack Nicholson from the 90s as well. But yes, did Mamet write it? I didn't realize that. It makes sense.
He might have been a rewrite. I think he wrote it.
I believe it. No, but it was everybody. Bobby Cannavale was great in it. Ray Romano was fantastic in it, and I was so glad that he was as good as he was.
Yeah,
it was excellent. No, and then did you see my Jerry Vale story?
No.
Jerry, Steve Van Zandt is playing Jerry Vale on stage singing, and I forget at what event, but it's a big room, and Jerry Vale himself, I believe, is in Goodfellas back in the day, and it seemed like
shit, that was Steve Van Zandt, huh?
Yeah, and it's so funny.
I noticed Jim Norton.
You're right, Jim Norton was Rickles. That's right. Holy shit! I didn't recognize that it was Jim Norton. Wow. And it's so funny because now that's good casting, but he just doesn't have the Rickles rhythm as much as he's a good put-down comic as well.
But I don't know who you would have got that could get any closer. Like, obviously you know what Rickles is supposed to sound like, but that was, like, you knew it was Rickles.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Also because anybody that's paid attention to Don Rickles has heard that story, 20 times.
With him in Casino and everything, making fun of De Niro and everything.
Well, no, that story about him, giving shit to mobsters, and then...
Oh, that's right, yes. And and all of a sudden it was a problem, and luckily there were enough big boys that are like, don't worry about it, Dan, we'll take care of it.
Yeah.
That's right, I forgot, Joey Gallo, that's right. Well, with Jerry Vale, it's so funny because, first of all, Sinatra used to call him Jerry Fail, because he just didn't think he was that good. And it's so, and I am of the belief as well that I could easily name 10 other great Italian singers before you get to Jerry Vale, from Vic Damone to, good Lord, what's Al Martino from the Godfather movie. Everybody that's better than Jerry Vale, in my opinion. And I love telling this story. My father and stepmother, my stepmother's really a jerk. And I could say worse things, but I'll leave it as a jerk. And they were having a yelling match one night. And my sister and I were upstairs, and we could hear him down in the kitchen yelling at each other, just like what a scene that would have happened in The Irishman. And she's like, "You never take me anywhere good." And he's like, "We just saw Jerry Vale 2 weeks ago." And my stepmother goes, "Jerry Vale sucks." And my sister and I were pounding the floor laughing. And anytime Jerry Vale comes up, both of us immediately go to Jerry Vale sucks. So when he showed up, I'm just like, that is outstanding. And I'm the only person laughing right now that Jerry Vale is singing. And all I can think of is my stepmother screaming, "Jerry Vale sucks."
That's great.
And it's like, yeah, she's, it's the one time I agreed with her. It's like, yeah, he actually does suck. He's just boring. He's just, he's not a bad singer per se. He was boring. And like I said, and that's why as much as, and again, my dad grew up in an Italian neighborhood, a great guy, but all of his friends were Italian. He loved Jerry Vale. And it's like, Dad, come on. But he liked Nat King Cole, so I'll take it easy on him. But I love The Irishman.
That makes the texture of the whole thing even, it fits right into that vibe where it's not, they're not seeing Sinatra. Like, obviously Sinatra played for mobsters.
Oh, sure.
But the whole point of the movie is that, like, this is a job these people had, and it wasn't exciting for them necessarily. It was just like they just went up, De Niro especially was just like a person that just went about his life doing his thing, and then this is how he paid his family's bills.
Yeah, painting houses, exactly. Yeah.
So it wasn't, they went out for a nice thing, but it wasn't like they were going to see the best guy. It was just this
right
B-list, D-list Sinatra.
Yep. 100%, man. No, and you're right. It was incredibly authentic from top to bottom, and that's why I love it so much. Absolutely, man.
I was so happy that I liked it too. I didn't see Silence, but I try to keep up with Scorsese. I think I own Silence on iTunes. I just haven't watched it yet.
I haven't seen it either, honestly. Well, and I'll be honest, man. It's funny because I respect the hell out of him, and I was totally cutting him slack on the Marvel movies. But then I have to admit, and I don't know who wrote the piece, but they're like, The Irishman is Scorsese's Marvel movie. And it's like, yeah, kind of. Yeah, a little bit.
The Scorsese Marvel argument happens outside of Scorsese so much. Like, he just answered a question at a thing. They're like, "Do you watch these Marvel movies?" And he's like, "No, the guy's in his 80s, And also genius, and he's been very on the record about the kind of movies that he likes. He puts out movies about the movies. He puts out those personal journey through American cinema with Martin Scorsese.
Absolutely.
If you want to know what he likes, he's been very clear about it.
100%.
And he didn't even say they were shit. He was just like, they're not for me. They're like a theme park ride, and that's fair.
But when he said they're not cinema,
that's
it's like,
not cinema.
And really. He finally walked it back.
Yeah.
But the first couple, because he did say it and then he did double down on it.
Right.
And it's like, okay, don't be an asshole about it. Well, and again, I love Martin Scorsese. He's a genius. And like you said, he's in his 80s. The other thing that surprised me was there's a guy that came out of the Corman factory, and it's like, you made your bones, making, and same thing with Coppola's just as bad. And Coppola was saying this stuff 10 years ago about, blockbuster movies and saying they're carnival rides and they're not real movies and stuff. And it's just, again, I get it, and they're entitled to their own opinions, and genius movie makers and absolutely on the Mount Rushmore of filmmakers and stuff.
Yeah.
But but it's like, well, if you're complaining because they're too formulaic, well, you kind of got a formula that you follow, Marty, and you've done it, for a long time, since the 70s, and it's like, I'm shrugging. I'm like, I don't know. It's
hard
kind
to
of not
disagree,
recognizing
John.
that.
Hard to disagree.
No,
I don't think that he has a formula that he goes back to time and time again. This movie is different from Goodfellas, is different from Casino. It's a whole different thing. It fits into a genre. He definitely has made gangster movies, and this, I feel like, is him doing the final word on that as far as Scorsese gangster movie. But he worked for Corman one time. He wasn't in the trenches with Corman, making crap. He made a Corman movie that was also a historical movie. And he was sort of trying to use that machine to be able to make his movie. And it was the first thing he ever got hired to do. So it's he made a movie on his own. Like I did. I made a comic book on my own. And then the first people that came and hired me, I made that porno comic. And I was just like, yeah, that sounds great. Do you want to hire me to do something? And so I totally get it. And also I did, not comparing myself to Scorsese, but just like as somebody who's worked in an artistic field, like I sort of see the moves, and it's like he got that gig and was like, all right, well, how do I make something decent, you know? And then as soon as he finished it, I can't remember who it was, but you read these Scorsese books and somebody came up to him and was just like, all right, well, you just spent a year of your life and you made this piece of shit. Don't ever do that again. And he was like, okay, I won't. And then he made Mean Streets, you know?
Yeah, that's true. No, that's fair, man. I respect what you're saying. I just think the language of The Irishman is consistent with his other mob movies. I mean, you know, again, I love, you know, Jimmy Whispers. Not that Jimmy Whispers, the other Jimmy Whispers.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever it was.
It's the same as, what's his name, 2 times. I'm going to get the papers.
Exactly, man. That's what we come for, man, is that kind of, and using that dialogue, he told a very complex story. And like you said, God, and it's so funny because some people don't like the way The Irishman ends. I love the way it ends.
Oh, yeah.
Because it totally is, like you said, this man who was so big becomes very small in his final years.
Yeah.
And it really is sad.
And
you know?
and the same, like people were, I mean, I feel like the thing people are most mad about, if they think about it with the Scorsese shit, it's just like you feel bad when somebody you like or somebody that people like doesn't like the thing you like. Like it's just, it's personal, you know, like
100%.
I get all the time when people don't like Star Wars. I'm just like, what are you saying? I'm stupid, you know? And it's just they're not saying that at all. They just don't like Star Wars for whatever reason. It's not their thing.
You're right.
And
yeah, you're right, Tom.
And it's with Scorsese specifically, like one of our clear geniuses, you know, like one of the living geniuses. I always just thought like for him specifically, to think that he would like the same shit you like is preposterous. You know, it's just like, I'm operating on whatever level I'm operating on. He's a million miles up above me. He's got to be liking some whole other type shit. You know, like it's no possible way he likes the same shit that I like. And then what comes out of him is that, you know, like his input has to be so varied. And I mean, you know, he read The Last Temptation of Christ years before he made The Last Temptation of Christ.
100%. Absolutely.
You know? So he's really, like, he's out there knowing about things and like, you know, I don't know.
No, man, you're right. You know, he's
playing smart.
He's playing 3-dimensional chess, and we're messing around with checkers. No, I agree with you. I think you're right. No, and again, that's why I said he's a genius. Coppola's a genius as well, and I respect the hell out of those guys. But yeah, no, I appreciate that point of view, dude. Well done. Well, anyway, I don't want to keep you. Good Lord, we've been going a good 2 hours now. So you see,
48-page comic. We just talked for 2 hours about it.
Absolutely, man. Timeshoppers, Action Lab, coming out in February.
In previews now. Tell your shops. FOC is in January sometime, so tell your shops if you hear this. If you've made it this far, for God's sakes, the book's only $15. You can get it for like $10 on DCBS or cheapgraphicnovels.com.
Oh, wow.
So definitely hit them up. Please give it a look. If you like any of this kind of talk, except for the parts about Love Boat that I did not participate in, it's definitely this kind of vibe, except funnier and through all of recorded history. So,
Tony, you're one of my favorite people, and that's why I'm always happy to have you back and talk about your stuff. And I can only highly recommend not only Timeshoppers, but also Tony's Star Wars stuff that's wrapping up for IDW. What's the name of the arc?
It's called Road to the Rise of Skywalker. It's Star Wars Adventures 27, 28, and 29. So. Very
nice. Excellent, man, with Mike Marici. Now, you say Marici. I always said Marici. I hope I'm saying it right, but I'll ask him next time I talk to him.
One of us is saying it wrong. I just say Mike when I see him because I don't know. How do you say my last name?
Fleecs.
Yeah, you say it right. So, but I don't get mad if people say Fleecs.
I understand. Well, you, again, from day one, you told me how to say your name, so I remembered.
Good man.
I was proud when I learned Sienkiewicz's name properly.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Instead of Sienkiewicz, of course, you know.
I still have to look it up if I'm going to spell it, though.
Oh, 100%. I do the same thing, please. And that's my greatest compliment was when Dave Gibbons saw me and said, John Suntress, and it was 2009. And I'm like, wow, I've only seen Dave face-to-face like 3 times, and he knows how to say my name properly better than Bendis does. And Bendis was already a friend. I'm like, what the hell? Dave Gibbons, good Lord. So,
you know what I want to talk to Sienkiewicz about is...
Tell me.
Chaykin's been putting up these pictures from the studio back in the day.
Yes.
And Sienkiewicz was full-on bald.
Yes.
And now he has a nice head of hair. I got to get to the bottom of what this is about, because I don't know if you know this about me, John, but I'm a bald American, and I'm not happy about it. I need to figure out some sort of solution. So not only is Sienkiewicz a genius artist, but he's also somehow a genius in having hair again. It doesn't look like a piece. Like it looks like he had like some sort of replacement surgery or something. I got to get to the bottom of this.
I'm assuming he got implants or whatever, but no, you're 100% right. And he also, and again, I love Bill. This is not in any way meant to be disrespectful to Bill in any way. No. He also fixed his teeth, and I mean, God bless him, man. No, I like Bill a lot. He's a good dude. And I agree with you. I know when I see those pictures from the 80s, it is jarring to see him with less hair. It's like Shatner, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, he looks great now. Like the guy's got an aesthetic, you know? Like he's a visual stylist. He knows what looks nice, and he really put it together.
You are absolutely right. That is so funny.
Good so idea. I don't know how to, I don't know him personally, so it's going to have to be some convention situation.
Oh, dude. Seriously, if we're both at a show, please let me know. I would be happy to walk up and introduce you to Bill because, once again, a genius that likes me. And I'm always like, I can't.
You really want to make that introduction? We're just like, this is my friend Tony, and then I go, tell me about your hair.
Well, you could just say, listen, Tony, you know how to talk. It's all right. You'll be fine. What the fuck introduces me to this asshole that wants me to know about my hair? It's exactly. Like, no. Hey, man, Bill, bad news. You know, the photos are out there, man, so people can see. And again, just like Shatner in the 70s and stuff, it's like, yeah, Bill did have that receding hairline. Absolutely, man.
I just hope I think Chaikin's probably doing it on purpose, like he's just fucking with him.
I think he's putting on a bunch of old pictures of himself. He just was going through his photo album. I mean, there's a ton of Facebook things with. Honestly, I don't think it is like an attack or anything like that. It's just like, hey, look at us in the 80s, you know, and stuff like that. I made fun of Howard. I'm like, I loved you in A Flock of Seagulls because he had the weird little hair flip going on. And I couldn't help it. I'm like, come on, man. I'm so sorry. It's so funny. The 11 o'clock guys used to always go, oh, there's Suntra's name dropping again. I'm like, I don't do it to like say, aren't I cool? It's like, I am literally like enjoying myself. Like, I cannot believe these great creators that I read as a kid or in college or whatever are like now friendly and literally happy to see me.
Yeah.
Or they're lying to my face, you know.
With Chaikin specifically, like you guys also, you know, you like the same shit. So
yes.
Like, you know, he's not like Scorsese. He likes all the same shit you like. So he
100%. No,
he wants to talk about old movies and musicals and stuff. Do you get down on Broadway like he does?
Oh no, I've seen great plays here in Chicago. And it's so funny because I'm always, when I come in for New York Comic Con, hoping to like make time and see a good Broadway play. And I was just missed because I don't like musicals. Like Howard loves musicals.
Yeah, that's a big deal with him.
I like classic musicals. I'm not interested in seeing new versions of them now.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, God, you know, that's Broadway. But like The Best Man, that Gore Vidal play, that also was a great 60s movie. There was a revival of that. Or To Kill a Mockingbird. I would have loved to have seen To Kill a Mockingbird.
The Sorkin.
I want to see the straight-up dramas or the straight-up comedies. Yeah. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, Chaikin loves those musicals. Gus Vasquez, who works in the studio now, he also, like, a big theater kid and likes musicals, and him and Chaikin get along swimmingly because Chaikin's just a personable dude, but I think they really get down and talk musicals and stuff.
Sure. No, it's great. With me, like you said, it's old stuff, and I remember he's like, have you ever read the Bob Hope biography? I'm like, just finished it last week. Whenever we were talking about it. And literally, that was all true. And he's like, okay, good. You know, it's like a checklist with Howard. Absolutely. And truly, I always do go, all right, Howard, what are you reading that I'm not aware of or what are you watching that I should be watching? I love Chaikin. He's amazing. And truly, Hey Kids Comics Volume 2 out from Image.
Oh, really?
And yeah, the second chapter of the story. And I saw him in August at Terrificon. And we just talked for a little while. And and again, a bunch of other Bronze Age creators. Howard's like, no, talk to John. He knows what he's doing. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Howard. Jesus Christ. So, you know, he's the best.
Yeah.
He's the best.
Yeah.
And also, like, when you were saying about Star Wars and how much it was a dream job, I love talking to Howard, Roy Thomas, and also Walt Simonson about when they ran Star Wars. And they're just like, yeah, it was a gig. It wasn't that big of a deal to us. It was just something we were doing.
And Howard even, like, he's tired. He's done with it now. He's like,
oh, absolutely.
Don't talk to me about this nonsense.
Exactly.
But it's the same thing. Like, I'm not mad that he doesn't care about Star Wars comics.
No.
You know, like he's on a different level. He's, he has a completely different input than I have. That dude is incredibly well read.
Good Lord, yes.
To the point where it's like intimidating for me. Like, we're friendly, we get along. But whenever I see him, I'm just like, if he starts getting deep, like, I'm going to look like a deer in headlight, if he starts talking about some books and stuff that I haven't read. So I just, we keep it friendly, but I don't know how deep I could go with him because he's way smarter than me.
I hear you, buddy. Well, dude, this was great. Very fun. A really great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me back on. Thanks for helping me spread the word on this. Indie comics, we need all the, all the help we can get getting the word out there because it's a crowded marketplace. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate you.
Tone, from in my lifetime to your current work, I've always appreciated what you do in comics. I think you're a funny guy in general, but I do think you're a great voice in comics, and I'm happy to help you promote. And all I can say is, folks, check out the Rise of Skywalker run in IDW Comics, the Young Adventure Star Wars stuff, and, of course, Timeshoppers from Action Lab, coming out in February. But in the preview catalog now, go to your local store and order this thing. But Tony Fleecs, thanks for your time.
Thanks, John.
There you go, Timeshopper from Tony Fleecs. Pick it up. Go to not only Action Lab's website, but you can go to Tony and Christian's website for Timeshopper, which is timeshoppercomic.com, and it will give you all the information. It will also keep you in the loop as far as other great words. I'll tell you, some incredible pull quotes from people like Bob Gale, the writer of Back to the Future, enjoyed this book. Tom Richmond from Mad Magazine, and another good friend of Word Balloons, Ivan Brandon, a fine indie comic creator, and they all love him. And you know something here? I completely agree with Ivan Brandon. Tony's one of the funniest guys I know. The book will make you one of the funniest guys you know. I need more comics like this. Could not agree with Ivan more, and I'm sure you can tell from our conversation. I do. But, Tony's a buddy, and he's been a long-time buddy, and I'm glad that he's one of my friends, and I'm happy to help him promote his brand new, very funny book, Timeshopper, on today's Word Balloon. All brought to you again by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. League, you mean a lot. You're backing me up, and I appreciate your support via subscriptions to Word Balloon from Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. Click on the front page of wordballoon.com. Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Aftershock is a great publisher who's been making its mark for a couple years now. Joe Pruitt and Mike Martz, the creative leaders of Aftershock, tapping some of the top names in the business to make comics for them. We're talking about Garth Ennis and Marguerite Bennett and Steve Orlando and Tim Seeley and newcomers like Stephanie Phillips and Adam Glass. Adam's kind of, well, he's not a newcomer, actually. He's been doing comics for a while, but I think he really made his distinct mark at Aftershock Comics. Did I mention Stephanie Phillips, of course, another great creator there who continues to do books for Aftershock, and Matthew Klickstein, new to the comic scene, but a great writer who is, I'll tell you, that You Are Obsolete is a fantastic series. You know, Marguerite's been doing Animosity, and Garth Ennis has been doing A Walk Through Hell and some great graphic novels. Marguerite has a great graphic novel. Check out not only their ongoing series, but their graphic novels as well. If you got a horror fan, man, I'll tell you, they excel at horror. I think they excel at crime fiction. Killer Groove, from our buddy Ollie Masters, is a tremendous crime story in L.A. It's a great companion piece to his East Coast crime story for Vertigo, The Kitchen. I'm telling you, man, they just do great books that are worthy of your support and attention. Don't take my word for it. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Coming up on Word Balloon, before we wrap up the week, we got Matt Rosenberg, who's joining us to talk about his new Hawkeye series that debuts on New Year's Day, and also a lot of other great Marvel work, and his indie work at Black Mast, and even prior to that, that led to his Marvel gigs. A great conversation that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Until next time, thanks for listening. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2019.